Hello everybody, Kemo Sabi here, coming at you with another video. So this one's off of Take Back Your Power net web page, read it by Naydler, Ph.D. Published 6th of April 2019, with a topic of 5G, the big picture. Acclaimed author and philosopher Naydler, Ph.D. is our guide as we explore what a full-scale development of 5G may mean for humanity at this critical time, and how we can help create a better alternative. Be sure to read his conclusion. 5G from space. In November of 2018, the United States Federal Communications Commission, FCC, authorized a rocket company, SpaceX, owned by the entrepreneur Elon Musk, to launch a fleet of 7,518 satellites to complete SpaceX's ambitious scheme to provide global satellite broadband services to every corner of the Earth. The satellites will operate at a height of approximately 210 miles and irradiate the Earth with extremely high frequencies between 37.5 gigahertz and 42 gigahertz. This fleet will be in addition to a smaller SpaceX fleet of 4,425 satellites already authorized earlier in this year by the FCC, which will orbit the Earth at a height of approximately 750 miles. And is set to bathe us in frequencies between 12 gigahertz and 30 gigahertz. The grand total of SpaceX satellites is thus projected to reach just under 12,000. There are at present approximately 2,000 fully functioning satellites orbiting the Earth. Some beam down commercial GPS or sat-nav, some provide TV, some provide mobile phone services, and some bounce radar back and forth to produce images for meteorologists and military surveillance. The Earth is thus already comprehensively irradiated from outer space, but the new SpaceX fleets will constitute a massive increase in the number of satellites in the skies above us, and correspondingly massive increase in the radiation reaching the Earth from them. The SpaceX satellite fleet is, however, just one of the several that are due to be launched in the next few years, all serving the same purpose of providing global broadband services. Other companies, including Boeing, OneWeb, and Spiral Global, are each launching their own smaller fleets, bringing the total number of projected new broadband satellites to around 20,000, every one of them dedicated to irradiating the Earth at similar frequencies. Why is there this sudden flurry of activity? The new satellite fleets are contributing to a concerted global effort to upgrade the electromagnetic environment of the Earth. The upgrade is commonly referred to as 5G, or Fifth Generation Wireless Network. It has become customary in tech circles to talk about the introduction of 5G as involving the creation of new global electronic ecosystem. It amounts to geoengineering on a scale never before attempted. While this is being sold to the public as an enhancement of quality of video streaming for media and entertainment, what is really driving it is the creation of the conditions within electronic or artificial intelligence will be able to assume an even greater presence in our lives. In a previous article for New View, Radiation Robot Bees and 5G, New View 85, autumn 2017, I described how the introduction of 5G will require hundreds of thousands of new mini mobile phone masts, as referred to as base stations, in urban centers throughout the UK, and literally millions of new masts in cities throughout the rest of the world, all emitting radiation at frequencies at power levels far higher than those to which we are presently subjected. These new masts are much smaller than the masts we currently see beside our motorways and on top of buildings. They will be discreetly attached to the side of shops and offices or secured to lampposts. I've seen many on different lampposts in my community here. The 20,000 satellites are a necessary supplement to this land-based effort, for they will guarantee that rural areas, lakes, mountains, forests, oceans, and wilderness, where there are neither buildings nor lampposts, will all be incorporated into the new electronic infrastructure. No 1 inch of the globe will be free of radiation. Given the scale of the project, it is surprising how few people are aware of the enormity of what is now just beginning to unfold all around us. Very few people have ever even heard about the 20,000 new satellites that are due to transform the planet in a so-called smart planet, irradiating us night and day. In the national media, we do not hear voices questioning the wisdom, let alone the ethics, of geoengineering a new global electromagnetic environment. Instead, there is this blith acceptance that technology must continue to progress, and the presence in our lives of increasingly smart machines and gadgets that each year become cleverer and more capable is an inevitable part of this progress. And who doesn't want progress? Almost everyone loves their sleek, seductively designed phones, pad, and virtual assistants, and regards them as an indispensable part of their lives. But the question we should ask is whether we also want increasingly intense exposure of the natural environment and all living creatures, including ourselves, to more and more electromagnetic radiation. It is likely that this does not entail any adverse health consequences, as both government and industry claim. If the electromagnetic waves that connect our smartphones to the internet travel through brick, stone, and cement, then what happens when these same wavelengths encounter our bodies? Be assured that they do not just bounce off us. They travel into the human body. The degree to which they are absorbed can be precisely measured in what is called the specific absorption rate, expressed in watts per kilogram of biological tissue. When we fill our houses with Wi-Fi, we are irradiating our bodies continuously. When we hold a smartphone to our ear, electromagnetic waves irradiate our brains. Do we really believe this could be completely harmless? Waves and frequencies. At present, mobile phones, smartphone tablets, most Wi-Fi, and so on all operate at under 3 gigahertz, which is called the microwave region of the electromagnetic spectrum. If you could see and measure their wavelengths, you would find that they are many centimeters or inches long. A smartphone operating at 800 megahertz, for example, sends and receives signals with wavelengths of 37.5 centimeters, just under 15 inches. Operating at 1.9 gigahertz, the wavelengths are 16 centimeters, just over 6 inches. Wi-Fi uses the 2.4 gigahertz frequency band with 12 centimeter wavelengths, just under 5 inches long. The introduction of 5G will entail the use of considerably higher frequencies than these, with correspondingly shorter wavelength above 30 gigahertz. Wavelengths are just millimeters rather than centimeters long. The millimeter wave band from 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz is referred to as an extremely high frequency, and its wavelengths are between 10 millimeters and 1 millimeter in length. Up to the present time, extremely high frequency electromagnetic radiation has not been widely propagated, and its introduction marks a significant step change in the kind of electromagnetic energy that will become present in the natural environment. The reason why millimeter waves are used for 5G is that much larger bands of spectrum are available in the extremely high frequencies than at lower frequencies. This means that there can be much broader bandwidth. Broader bandwidth means that larger quantities of data can be transferred, and the speed of the transfer of the data will be significantly faster. One of the effects of this is that it reduces what is called latency or time lag in the system, so it improves the quality of video streaming, but in doing so it also enables a greater seamlessness between the data accessible from virtual sources and our perception of objects in the real world, as it is required, for example, in augmented reality applications. Greater seamlessness means that we are more effortlessly inhabitant the natural and electronic worlds as if they were a single reality. One of the technical problems of using frequencies in the millimeter region of the spectrum is that because the waves carrying the data are so teeny, being only millimeters long, they are less able to pass through physical barriers like walls and trees. They are the longer waves of lower frequencies. This is why it is necessary to have so many more new phone masts or base stations. They will need to be spaced at 100 meters apart in cities, because beyond this distance their signals weaken and are therefore less able to penetrate buildings and connect with devices inside. As well as being more closely spaced, the 5G stations will operate at much higher power than current phone masts in order to ensure that the signals are significantly strong. Because the wavelengths are so much smaller, the antennas transmitting and receiving them will also be much smaller than those of current phone masts and electronic devices. A single 5G transmitter/receiver will have a large number of teeny antennas grouped together in one unit. An array of just over 1,000 such antennas measure only 4 square inches. So, will easily fit into a small base station on a lamppost, while the smartphone in your pocket will probably have 16. Both 5G satellites and 5G land-based masts will use a system called the phase array. In the phase array, groups of antennas are coordinated to radiate pulses in a specific direction and in a specific time sequence. This allows a concentrated beam of radio waves to be exactly aimed at designated targets to enable signals to be sent or received. Because the beams are concentrated in this way, this adds to their power, which means they are able to more easily penetrate buildings. But it also means that any living creature that gets in the way of such a concentrated beam will be subjected to a powerful dose of extremely high-frequency radiant electricity. A study published earlier this year demonstrated that certain insects, because of their small body size, are particularly vulnerable to the millimeter waves of the higher frequencies to be utilized by 5G. Other studies have shown that bacteria and plants are also vulnerable, and so also, one might expect, are the skin and eyes of animals, including, of course, human beings, as well as its ability to concentrate power in focused beams. Phased array technology has a further complicating factor. Either side of the main beam, the time intervals between the pulses are different from the time intervals between those of the main beam, but they may overlap each other in such a way as to produce extremely rapid changes in the electromagnetic field. This can have a particularly detrimental effect on living organisms, because instead of the radiation decaying when it is absorbed into the living tissue, it can be re-radiated within the body. The moving charges streaming into the body effectively become antennas that re-radiate the electromagnetic field and send it deeper into the organism. These re-radiated waves, known as Brillion precursors, named after the French physicist Leon Brillion, who first described them in 1914. Research suggests that they can have a significant and highly detrimental impact on living cells. The unreassuring assurances of the government and industry. The government body charged with protecting public health. Public Health England advises us that there is no convincing evidence that radio frequency radiation, which radio, television, mobile phones, smartphones, and 5G all use, have any health effects on either adults or children. This advice is based on recommendations of supposedly independent body called AGNIR, Advisory Group on Non-Ionizing Radiation, which produced a report in 2012 on the safety of radio frequency radiation. The report stated that there was a lack of convincing and conclusive evidence for any adverse health effects. It was like giving a blank check to the telecommunications industry to move on into the higher frequencies without any heed for consequences. It turns out that far from being independent, AGNIR has a high proportion of members with blatant conflicts of interests, and the report distorted or simply left out of account evidence that should have compelled them to reach the opposite conclusion to the one that they arrived at. In a forensic analyst of the report, the environmental health researcher Sarah Starsky made it clear that only a willful disregard of the available scientific evidence could explain its internal contradictions and apparent incompetence. And yet, it is the basis of current UK government policy, allowing government to roll out 5G without so much as even a nod toward the need for prior health and safety assessment. Health and safety simply do not feature in government thinking, despite a veritable mountain of literally thousands of research papers demonstrating adverse health effects, which continues to grow at the rate of roughly 350 per year, on average practically one every day. One of the reasons for ignoring this evidence in the hell for leather dash to create the 5G electronic ecosystem is the conviction in the government circles that unless we introduce it immediately, we will be left behind, and our economic growth and competitiveness will be put at risk. There is simply no time to consider the possible health consequences. The National Infrastructure Commission, whose 2016 report Connected Future forms the basis of current government policy, pushed this panicky version of the UK falling behind our nations and urged the government to ensure that the new digital infrastructure is fully in place by 2025. The NIC report repeatedly points out that the rewards of the connected future are to be measured in billions of pounds worth of revenue. The mind-boggling amounts involved are well exemplified in a recent estimate that the global media industry alone stands to gain $1.3 trillion from 5G by 2025, just 5.5 years from now. Not least because 5G will unlock the potential of augmented reality AR and virtual reality VR, the irony that the connected future is one in which dizzying profits stand to be made from technologies that disconnect us more and more from the real world is entirely missed. The sums involved are significant to explain why the telecoms industry has for the last 25 years done its utmost to ensure that research into the health effects of wireless technologies produce negative or inconclusive results. Since 1993, the industry has financed a large number of studies, saving governments a great deal of expense and at the same time preserving the continued illusion that the jury is still out on whether exposure to radio frequency radiation causes harm. Earlier this year, The Guardian published an article citing research which showed that while 67% of independently funded studies found a biological effect of exposure to radio frequency radiation, only 28% of industry-funded studies did. Industry-funded studies are almost 2.5 times less likely than independent studies to find health effects. The authors of The Guardian article explain that the telecoms industry doesn't need to win the scientific argument about safety, but simply keep the argument running indefinitely by producing studies with results that fail to verify or even better contradict the research that does find adverse health effects. One of the most notorious is the mammoth industry-funded Interphone study, which managed to conclude that holding a mobile phone to the head actually protects the user from brain tumors. This study, which is full of contradictions and suffers from grievous design flaws, is often quoted as the most authoritative to date, while it has in fact been thoroughly discredited. Nevertheless, the impression is maintained that there is no scientific consensus, and so there are not scientific grounds for action to be taken. Needless to say, this suits government just as much as it suits industry. The path to total immersion. Beyond the health effects, there is another level altogether of what the rollout of 5G actually entails. To gain a perspective on this, we should remember that this is not so long ago that the Earth's magnetic field was undisrupted by human-generated electromagnetic frequencies. Before the 1880s, there was only two main causes of electromagnetism, both of them natural: the lightning of thunderstorms, which also set in motion the very weak low frequencies resonance is known as Schumann resonances, and sunlight, lightning and sunlight produce effects in specific and very limited parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. The very idea that such a thing as electromagnetism or electromagnetic spectrum exists was not even entertained before the 19th century, and from the point of view of pre-electoral age, the truth of the situation was that they indeed did not exist as factor of experience. Beyond lightning and sunlight, the energies of the electromagnetic spectrum did not impact on human life, for they were entirely dormant. In that pre-electrical world, both lightning and sunlight were regarded with a certain degree of awe, as natural phenomena expressed as of powers greater than anything human beings could muster. In antiquity, both were associated with gods, lightning with violent storm gods, invariably with underworld associations like Seth, Baal, and Zeus, and sunlight with sublime solar deities like Ra, Shamash, and Apollo. In the later Judeo-Christian era, the widespread sense that these phenomena had a spiritual source persisted, with lightning regarded as expressiveness of the divine wrath and the light of the garment of the cosmic logos. We touch here a deeply felt relationship to nature that has been largely eroded in the centuries since the scientific revolution. In the course of the 18th century and 19th centuries, both lightning and light were stripped of their spiritual numinosity, therefore clearing the way for an entirely materialistic explanation of light, an entirely technological approach of electricity. In the early days, the frequencies utilized were at the lower end of the electromagnetic spectrum. In the 1890s, the power lines that delivered the new mains electricity to factories and houses were standardized at either 50 or 60 hertz or cycles per second. When public radio broadcasts began in the 1920s, they were mostly in the long wave frequencies under 500 kilohertz, thousands of cycles per second. As the century wore on, the frequencies used by new and improved technologies became higher and higher. In the 1930s and 40s, medium and shortwave frequencies between 500 kHz and 1700 kHz were utilized, while in the 1950s, the very high frequencies, VHS, of 30 to 300 MHz, or millions of cycles per second, were employed for both radio and TV broadcasting. During World War II, a method was discovered for generating even higher frequencies between 3 and 30 GHz, thousands of millions of cycles per second, which became the basis for radar. With each escalation in frequency, more power was required to transmit the radio waves. The advent of mobile phones, smartphones, and Wi-Fi brought into the widespread use of the ultra-high frequency, UHF, part of the spectrum 300 MHz, 300 GHz for signal transmission. Transmission in these frequencies demand more than 10 times the power needed for VHF transmission. Today, posed at the threshold of the new era of an extremely high-frequency electromagnetic ecosystem, with frequencies up to 70 GHz envisioned, yet more power will be required for the effective transmission of its millimeter waves. Then the natural environment will be fully saturated with an invisible fog of radiation. In this brief historical sketch, we see higher and higher frequencies forming the basis of each new technological innovation. As each one of the new technologies was introduced, human beings became a little more disassociated from the natural world. Consider how this happened. From the 1890s onwards, the supply of main electricity to homes, schools, hospitals, and factories caused a revolution in living standards, liberating humanity from subservice to nature's cycles of day and night, summer and winter, by giving access to a new source of light, warmth, and power. Then in the 1920s, radio enabled people to communicate over vast distances and brought the voices of kings and politicians, singers and poets into our living rooms, even though they were not physically present. In the 1950s, television intensified the experience of an absent yet present world conveyed by the moving image. I remember as a child the addictiveness of the quality of the television. One is drawn out of oneself and away from awareness of one's immediate surroundings into the fascinating world of images on the screen. With the advent of the smartphone, the trend towards addictiveness was greatly strengthened, partly because the screen became portable, interfaced with the internet, and partly because of the deliberate exploitativeness policies of Facebook, Google, and others to hook people into an addictive relationship to the devices. Smartphone addiction both disassociates users from their own inner center of stillness and at the same time disconnects them from the natural environment. 5G will further accentuate this tendency for people to lose themselves, and it will weaken even more than their relationships to nature, for its promise to make advanced immersive virtual reality accessible to all. While VR headsets have been commercially available for some time now, VR is still in its infancy. The next development in VR technology is to supplement the headset with a haptic suit, which enables the wearer to experience sensation of touch, pressure, and warmth, hardness, softness, moisture, and dryness in virtual reality. Such opportunities for total immersion in a virtual reality will lead to an increasingly confusion as to which world we really belong, the electronically generated or the natural world. The use of augmented reality made possible through special helmets, electronic glasses, or contact lenses that overlay virtual content onto the experience of the physical world will add to the confusion, as the virtual is increasingly integrated within the real world. People will become adjusted to regarding the virtual world as having a great claim on their attention, their emotion and thoughts as the natural world. The temptation will be to give their loyalty to that which not only undermines their relatedness to nature, but also, through its assault on the imagination, has a corrosive effect on the inner life of the soul. The confusion will only be exacerbated by a huge increase in the use of 3D holographics that will give virtual entities the ability to incarcerate electronically into the physical environment. The temptation will be just the same thing there. This is what the saturation of the world with extremely high frequencies millimeter waves will enable. The waves themselves are only part of the issue. It is the technologies that ride on the back of the waves and their impact on our inner lives that should also concern us. The formation of the global electronic brain. But if 5G promises to radically alter the experimental world we inhabit in these ways, there is something further that we must understand if we are to grasp what is really being prepared. At the same time as increasingly sophisticated technologies increasingly disconnected human beings from the natural world, a network of electronic intelligence, global in extent, gradually emerged. At first, it was under close human supervision, but it has steadily grown more autonomous. Consider the difference between radio broadcasting and the internet. The former is under tight human control and serves a very specific purpose, whereas the latter has established itself as a permanent, constantly available electronic infrastructure of undefined scope and reach. What has been happening over the recent decades is the increasing coordination of intelligence endowed machines so that they operate without need of human supervision. The efforts now underway to create a 5G electronic ecosystem are necessary precondition for developing and perfecting a global artificial intelligent network, which feeds on the very fast transfer of large amounts of information. This global electronic brain, inconclusively called the Internet of Things, is already impacting on our lives. Through the Internet of Things, more and more things will be linked to the Internet and made smart by being given the ability to function autonomously. On smart motorways, your car will drive itself while you, wearing your VR headset and haptic vest, play interactive computer games in the back seat. And in your smart house, your fridge will autonomously order more eggs, milk, and cheese for you via a wireless connection with a supplier. But the reality is that the Internet of Things is itself the precursor to what has been called the Internet of Thinking, in which human beings will find themselves having to live in a relationship to the vast global electronic intelligence. It will be active everywhere in our environment, and we shall be obligated to interact with it in order to accomplish the simplest of tasks. In the Internet of Thinking, it is not hard to see the lineaments of electronically supercharged totalitarian state, with unprecedented control over the minute of individuals' lives. The possibility of this happening will only be increased by the thousands of new mini-phone masts and satellites irradiating every inch of the planet with millimeter waves. For this is what 5G means. It means putting in place not just an improved telecommunication system, but rather a system of systems, the infrastructure of electronic totalitarianism. A curtain drawn against the light. Our world is increasingly smothered by a fog of radio waves, microwaves, and millimeter waves. It may seem that the gods of the underworld have taken hold of humanity in an ever-tightening grip, drawing us towards the false lights, the illusory lights of the hell beings and the hungry ghosts that the Tibetan Book of Dead long ago warned against. The electromagnetic energies that we have summoned and which promised to give us new powers now appear to be overpowering us, carrying us down into an underworld realm of hellish entertainment and distraction, of illusion and disconnection from the reality that really matters, the reality of nature and the spiritual order that infuses nature, the reality of fellow creatures with whom we share our world, living in soil and sky and walking the earth beside us. We must ask, does the earth need an electronic ecosystem? Is it going to benefit in any way from being irradiated with millimeter waves? Is there actually any need at all for 5G? Can we even remotely conceive that 5G is an answer to any of the pressing is there any need at all for 5G? Can we even remotely conceive that 5G is an answer to any of the pressing ecological, social, and spiritual problems that face us today? We stand at a dreadful threshold, and yet surrender to despair cannot be the right response. What can we do? First of all, we can protest. There are campaigns against 5G that we can now join. There are petitions to sign, letters to write, and legal actions to support. Then there's a little thing about saying we're the best place to begin, but I'm not going to put that on there just in case of YouTube being sensitive about certain things. But they're saying that place, which has now gathered nearly 30,000 signatures, more than 50,000 now, including those of many health professionals, environmentalists, and other scientists. But as well as protest, there is something further that needs to be done, and that is to bring spiritually informed understanding to the deeper significance of the global electronic brain, whose emergence 5G will hasten. To this end, we need to develop a clear perception of the moral quality of electricity and to better recognize the kind of spiritual entity or entities that it serves. This will empower us to break the spell that electricity and electronic technologies has cast over us, and it will enable us to form a more appropriate relationship to them. One of Rudolf Steiner's most helpful insights into electricity was his observation that it is light in a fallen-degraded state, light that has fallen beneath nature into the subnatural realm, and that is why we must actively guard against, or even increasingly actively guard against, an ever-increasing dependence on it, for it threatens to drag us down. This points to a third thing we can do, which is really the foundation of everything else. It is to rebuild our relationship to the light, which in its selfless benevolence and purity greets us every morning, and which, unlike the false illusory electronic lights that would lead us into the underworld, beckons us in a quite different direction towards our essential humanity. Though through a deepened meditative relationship to the light, practiced through the hours of the day and the seasons of the year, we can nurture a relationship to the inner light that is the source of all that is creative and good in the world. This inner light, known as cosmic logos. As the certain electrosmog is drawn across our world, we are presented with a sacred task that, come what may, we attend to all that light has to give, for therein lies a possible divine saving power. There you have it, everybody. There's a little thing about Christianity, this and that. I kind of left anything out that was really pushing one side of things. So if you do look up the webpage, there might be a few little things that I left out due to sensitivity. And there's a few notes here as well. One of the best sources of this information is the website of Global Union Against Radiation Development from Space Guards at stopglobalwifi.org webpage, and the related Cellular Phone Task Force website at Cell Phones Ask Force.org webpage. Both organizations are informed and inspired by the timeless research and companion of author Furstenberg, to whom this article is greatly indebted. 2. Source: IC and ISEA SIA Conference, Environmental Epidemiology and Exposure, Paris, 5/9/2006. 3. The rule is, the higher the frequency at which the wave oscillates, the shorter the wavelength will be. 4. Source: Qualcomm, July 2018. 5. Arno Thanians et al. Exposure of insects to radio frequency electromagnetic fields from 2 to 120 gigahertz. Nature, 2018. Sorry, a bit of a weird note. The insects show a maximum in absorbed radio frequency power at wavelengths that are comparable to their body size. The studied insects that are smaller than 1 centimeter show a peak in absorption at frequencies above 6 gigahertz, which are currently not often used for telecommunication, but are planned to be used in the next generation of wireless communication systems. 6. Cindy Russell of 5G Wireless Future, The Bulletin, January-February 2017, reviews the research and lists a large number of adverse health effects of military wave electromagnetic radiation, including erythema, antibiotic resistance, cataracts, compromised immune systems, and etc. Source: Orno Thanians et al. Exposure of insects to radio frequency electromagnetic fields from 2 to 120 gigahertz. And number 8, Kurt Ogstun interview on beryllium precursors, Microwave News, 2002, 22nd, the second month. According to Ogstun, a professor of electrical engineering and mathematics at the University of Vermont, a single beryllium precursor can open small channels to the cell membrane because as it passes through the membrane, it can induce a significant change in electrostatic potential across that membrane. 9. Report of the Advisory Group of Non-Liaising Radiation Health Effects from Radio Frequency Electromagnetic Fields, 2012. 10. Sarah J. Starsky, Inaccurate Official Assessment of Radio Frequency Safety by the Advisory Group on Non-Liaising Radiation, Review of Environmental Health, 2016. 11. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport and HM Treasury Next Generation Mobile Technologies, a 5G strategy for the UK, March 2017, which sets out the government strategy for the rollout of 5G, does not mention health and safety precautions. 12. One of the best sources for this mountain of research is the Bio Initiative Report 2012, which helpfully gathers it into manageable sections and is regularly updated. It can be accessed online at bioinitiative.org webpage. According to the report, between 2007 and 2012, approximately 1,800 new studies demonstrated adverse health effects, on average of 350 per year. 13. National Infrastructure Report, Connected Future, December 2016. The authors argue that only by doing so could the UK take full advantage of technologies such as artificial intelligence and augmented reality. The report is available at NIC.org webpage. 14. OVUM, 5G Economics of Entertainment Report, October 2018. The report was commissioned by Intel, and the summary is available at Newsroom Intel webpage. 15. Mark Hetzgard and Mark Dowie, The Inconvenient Truth About Cancer Mobile Phones, The Guardian, 14th July 2018. The blatant funding bias was first exposed in 2006 by Lewis Sleaston. Radiation Research and the Cult of Negative Results, Microwave News, July 2006. A good summary of the problem is given in Bias and Confounding EMF Science on the PowerWatch website, powerwatch.org. Webpage, UK Science Bias, ASP. 16. The Interphone study is devastatingly critiqued in L. Lloyd Morgan et al. Cell phones and brain tumors, 15 reasons for concern, 2009, available online at Electromagnetic Health.org webpage. 17. Ofcom, enabling 5G in the UK, March 2018. Jacques Goddard, Facebook exploits human weakness, admits former boss Sheen Parker, The Times, 10th November 2017. OVUM, 5G Economics of Entertainment Report. 20. Maynard Williams, Welcome to the Internet of Thinking, The Telegraph, 8th of May 2018. 21. Nokia White Paper, 5G, a System of Systems, Nokia webpage. The appeal can be accessed at 5G Space Appeal org webpage. And 23. Rudolf Steiner, Athrophilosophical Leading Thought, Forest Row, Rudolf Steiner Press, 2007. Hope you enjoyed it, everybody. And Jeremy Naydler is a Ph.D., is a philosopher who specializes in the religious lives of ancient cultures. He is a fellow of the Tenemus Academy, an author of The Temple of the Cosmos, Shamanic Wisdom in the Pyramid Texts, The Future of the Ancient World, and Gyoth on Science. He lives in Oxford, England. I hope you enjoyed the write-up, everybody. Be awesome if you subscribe, and great if you leave me with some comments. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Keep her going. Thanks. Bye.